Okay, now moving on. So, the ritual of transmission. At its core, all three forms of these myth, religion, and film, they all are rituals of transmission, meaning they are a transfer of consciousness through symbol, story, and shared attention. So, look at the mechanics of it. Myth transmits cosmic law through symbol, religion transmits devotion and order through rite, film transmits identity and vision through image. Each depends on the same principle, a container, be it a temple, text, or a screen. It relies on a medium, whether it is a voice, a priest, or a director. It also needs a participant, whether that is an initiate, a believer, or a viewer. Okay, so like when you look at it in that way, you can see how they all have some of the same, or they all do have the same elements that makes them, pretty much one in the same, dare I say that, right? Because to some people that will feel blasphemous, but for those who truly do the study, you'll see that it's true, right? um you'll see that it's true. So let's move on. Okay, so now the film film is modern ritual disguised as entertainment. The masses is going to look at it as it's just entertainment. It's just something to laugh, cry at, or whatever. It's much more than that. It is ritual. The theater is like a temple, right? It's a darkened space. It's a darkened room. There's collective silence. There's light projected onto a screen or a veil. It's a literal silver screen. It's a mirror of consciousness. So the filmmaker is assuming the role of the high priest or the shaman. This is the power of a filmmaker. This is what you got to know in a person that constructs stories through film, right? So they're operating in the role of a high priest or a shaman. They're orchestrating emotional rites using sound frequencies, archetypal imagery, and visual rhythm. So the audience enters a trance when you go into movies. So the audience is in a trance receiving transmission and undergoing a symbolic initiation, whether that's laughter, fear, grief, catharsis. These are all ancient alchemical ingredients. So the movies, cinema is the 21st century mystery school. This is where the most magic happens. The projector is the torch, the screen is the cave wall, and the myth is still burning in the shadow and the light. This is the same thing. It's the same concept. You have to be able to see it for what it truly is. Right? So you just got to be able to see it for what it truly is. Now, when we are now looking at this is a table, right? So it shows the different means of how all three of these are related. And in all the human body, the human nervous system is the altar. The myth is moving through image and sound to rewire perception, which is literal neuro alchemy that we just look at as culture. We don't understand the power that is in it. Now, what I realize is, and if you look in society and you notice those who are paid the most money, like athletes and entertainers, they are paid such massive amounts of money, and it's because they have the job of directing the collective conscious. through imagery of what they are. Whether they are aware of it and know it or not, that is the power that they ultimately have. Because they can be the symbol of an archetype activating in the masses amounts of people. So there's a lot that comes with it. So when we look at this table here, you look at the between the myth, religion, and film. I broke it down here between the different elements of medium, the transmission mode, the psychic function, the energetic goal, and the result. And you can see it all here, and you can see how they're all related. They're all structured the same. So this is how they are all follow the same template of being of the way that they structure. Now, why the transmission matters. From an esoteric lens, transmission is not just information. It's energy plus intention. So every story carries an energetic signature. And when shared communally, that signature imprints the collective field. That's why myths endure and religions will expand and films shape generations. Because of this, when we consume them unconsciously, we become programmed to their transmission. When we decode them consciously, we awaken. That's the difference between being under a spell and becoming the spellcaster. The goal is to become the spellcaster. So it's my role as a decoder, which is basically to be a priestess of modern mythology. When you're decoding, you stand in the lineage of ancient storytellers. You're reminding people that film is not just content. It is ritual in motion. Because when you decode a movie, you're reversing the flow of the transmission. You're taking back what was unconsciously received and making it conscious again. You are bringing it to light. That's esoteric reclamation. That is reclaiming your mind. Myth told is programming. It's programming. There's always this story, this myth, this legend that becomes bigger than life itself. And when telling this story, there's certain elements within these myths that the people of that time, of that area, that geography, region, or whatever, understand. And there's a sense of wisdom and knowledge pertaining to their way of life. So it's programming, and it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes this programming is put in place to save your life. See, this is why you can't approach it emotionally. Because if you approach it emotionally, you can't take it for what it is. So you cannot approach this knowledge being in your feelings. There's no place for your feelings when you're dealing with knowledge. So sometimes the programming ain't bad. Sometimes the programming is in place for a reason. That's just like if you watching it, Welcome to Dairy, right? So in the show, it Welcome to Dairy, the native people had a myth, had a legend pertaining to Pennywise that went back generations, that gave them the wisdom of understanding what they was dealing with. So the native people knew what they were dealing with. He wasn't killing them, he was killing the people of Derry, because they understood. They had a myth, a legend that was passed down, handed down generations, that provided, that transmitted the knowledge so that they could survive and sustain themselves. That was the whole point of it. Now, granted, there comes times and places where certain means of protection becomes outdated, but that requires one to do one's work. But that in a sense, so when I say that, because that's in a sense to understand, everything isn't always just this or that. It's not that simple. And when you playing that game, you're operating very low vibrational. You're playing the game that they set up for you. That's the point of the black and white checkerboards. The black and white checkerboard is about duality. So if you're getting caught up in duality, you just being split. You can't be your whole true, authentic, higher, elevating self because you split between this or that. You caught up in human things. That's not a totally bad thing. Don't get me wrong. It just has no place when you're dealing with higher knowledge. You see what I'm saying? So that same current that was present in those mystery schools is now present through the screens, through Dolby Digital. This is the new position. This is modern. This is how it is in modern times. So it's different tools, but it's the same transmission. What was once religion became story. What became story became cinema. And what cinema becomes next depends on who awakens behind the lens. It depends on who it is that becomes awakened to that truth. So this is why the transition matters. The transmission matters. This is what you have to understand in terms of that. Before a movie has a script, before it has a cast, before there's a scene, it has frequency. So every creative act begins as vibration, an idea charged with emotion, intention, and will. That intentional vibration imprints an energetic signature, a subtle resonance that carries through every stage of creation. You understand? So, and this is not just film, really. This is really any sense of art. So when you creating and you making things, and you're having a purpose or intention that's not truly aligned with who you are, that's when you may not get the results that you really looking for.